Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth week of interaction session on the course on control systems. My name is Soumya and I am a PMRF PhD student at IIT Gandhinagar. Last time we saw the effect of zeros, right, and closed loop control system as well. So we saw that how the zeros actually affect the dominance of the poles, right? That is what we saw. We also saw first order systems. Uh, and then before that we had studied Weibull stability. How do we determine what are the poles and zeros, what is the characteristic quotient, etc. Today we are going to study like you might have already gone through the lectures for this week as well. So today we are going to study second order systems. We'll also look into controllers. So mostly PI and D or PID or combination of all of those we'll study, and we'll also look into closed loop control. Okay, so that would be covered today. Apart from it, we'll be starting next week. You're going to actually read Routh Hurwitz criteria, so we will not delve into that today, but we'll surely start with learning what is the Hurwitz criteria and all of that, so and why it is the necessary condition. So we'll start with that first. uh, let's start with the today's lecture. Okay, so as you might have already gone through Professor Shankar Ram's uh, uh, theories that are taught, so this is an example of second order system. Okay, and then okay, so the governing order of second order system is going to be definitely given by second order differential equation, right? So let's say we assume it to be a general form of equation, which is d2 yt upon dt2 plus 2 zeta omega n, where zeta is your damping ratio and omega n is the natural frequency of the system, into dy by dt is equal to plus omega n square yt is equal to omega n square xt, where xt is the input. Okay, so we say that this is second order system. Now once we know that this is second order system, what we'll do, we'll take the Laplace transform and try to find out what is the transfer function of the system. We know very well that for finding out the transfer function of the system, all the initial conditions should be 0, right? So taking the initial conditions to be 0, I mean applying 0 initial conditions, the transfer function that you get for second order system is omega n square upon s square plus 2 zeta omega n plus omega n square. This is very standard form of equation and it is going to come throughout the course. I would, and each time you can't derive it, right? So it is better that with all the practices in the assignment and whatever we are doing here, you should know that okay, this is a transfer function for second order system. All right. So so if this is a transfer function of second order system, then the characteristic equation is given by s square plus 2 zeta omega ns plus omega n square. Okay. So what are the poles of the system? How do you determine what are the poles of the system? Definitely you equate it to be to equal to 0 and you get the poles of the system. All right. Based on what poles you have got for the system, you basically classify what could be the damping of the system. For example, zeta can vary in various ranges, right? So you can see here inside under root we have under root zeta square minus 1. So definitely if zeta is going to be some quantity greater than 1, it is going to have a different effect. If it is 0, it is going to have a different effect. If it is somewhere in between 0 and 1, it is going to have a different effect. And if it is 0, it is again a different effect. Okay, so I'm going fast because this is already covered in the lecture, right? I would not be spending a lot of time on it. But you can see this pole has been represented in the S plane here. And you can define the damped natural frequency omega d to be omega n into under root 1 minus zeta square. So that is a damped natural frequency of the system. So you can just, many times it will happen that will replace the imaginary part of the pole with this j into omega d types. Okay, so for different conditions of zeta, what things are possible? One of the thing is what happens if zeta lies in between 0 and 1. So if zeta lies in between 0 and 1, so what is going to happen? the poles would remain the same. It would be minus zeta omega n plus minus under root omega n under root zeta square minus 1. Since the zeta lies in between 0 and 1, a j would be coming out. So what would happen? You will have the poles which would be minus zeta omega n plus minus z plus minus j omega n under root 1 minus zeta square. So if the poles are available in such a way that they are conjugate pairs, then definitely your system is underdamped system. So it has to be looked in both ways, right? What is the range in which your zeta is lying, or where are the poles actually located? Both of them can help you in determination of what is the type of system. If it is critically damped, then zeta has to be equal to 1. Then you can see that there are two repeated poles and both of them are negative, right? So this is very simple. So if there is a system which has two repeated poles and both of them are negative, then it is going to be critically damped system. It is clear, right? For overdamped system also, what happens? You can see the poles are there for of this nature and there is no j term coming out because zeta is greater than 1. One of the other cases is also there. The fourth case which I am writing is zeta is equal to 0. What would happen if zeta is equal to 0? It would be 0 plus minus j omega n, right, under root 1 minus zeta square, and zeta is 0, so it would be 1 only. So your poles would be j omega n. Now you know, if it is just real part multiplied with some natural frequency, it means that there is some oscillatory nature of motion, and you can see that since there is no zeta term present over here, there is no damping present over here, the system will continue to exhibit this natural frequency with sustained oscillations. Okay, so this is the case of no damping. So this is a case for underdamped system, this is a case for critically damped system, this is a case of overdamped system. So let's say if I give you a system of any like with some arbitrary number, and I want you to tell me if it is underdamped, overdamped, critically damped, you can directly check what is the range in which my zeta is lying, and then you can accordingly classify if it is underdamped, overdamped, critically damped, or there is no damping and all of those. Okay. Now, there is something very important that comes over here, and we will do a couple of questions on this as well, that what are the performance specifications of second order systems. So we do this analysis only for underdamped system. All right, now we are not doing this for any other damped system. We do this for underdamped system. So you take the system, you calculate the unit step response, and based on that unit step response, we define the following. There is rise time, there is peak time, there is maximum peak overshoot, then there is settling time. So we are going to see all of them. So firstly, let's see what is rise time. So rise time is basically time taken for the system to reach 100% of its final value for the first time. So you can see here in the response, the system is reaching the final value, which is a steady state value of 1. First time here, so this is called the rise time. Jahan pe bhi it hits the steady state value for the first time is the rise time of the system, so it is denoted by TR. All right. So how do we define TR? TR is defined as pi minus beta upon omega d. Okay. So we have already seen. Okay, what is beta over here? Beta is cos inverse zeta. From here you can find it. Okay. And what was omega d? That we had already seen. It was omega n into 1 minus zeta, so under root 1 minus zeta square. Alright, so this is how, so I would request you to memorize this, because each of the times you won't be able to derive it and then put the values over there. So rise time is defined by pi minus beta upon omega d, and that's it. What is beta? Beta is cos inverse zeta. For peak time, so peak time is basically the first time where your dy by dt becomes 0. So your dy by dt becomes 0. Let me change the color. Yeah, your dy by dt becomes 0 over here. What is the time where it the first time the slope becomes 0? So that is the peak that you are achieving. We are not finding out the value of peak over here. We are rather interested in finding out what is the time spent to reach that peak. So that is called peak time. Okay, and from here you can directly see peak time is given by, sorry, Yeah. From here you can directly see that peak time is given by pi by omega d. Alright. Oh. After this maximum peak overshoot. Maximum peak overshoot means I want to find out what is the value of peak over here. So that is only possible when you know the time, right? That is why this peak time came before. Peak time was dy by dt is equal to 0. From there, we want to find out at what value of t this is happening. Alright, we achieved this by doing differentiation. Here it is maximum peak overshoot means what is the value? What is the value of the peak at time is equal to Tp? That's what we are going to try. We are trying to find out. It is expressed in terms of percentage. So you can see e to the power minus zeta pi upon under root 1 minus zeta square into 100. This gives you the value of maximum peak overshoot. One of the most important relations that you have to observe over here is the following. As zeta increases, maximum peak overshoot decreases. Okay, let's understand it. Okay, let's understand this with the help of an example. Let's say you are slamming a door. Okay, if you are slamming a door, for example, the door has some damper attached to it. Okay, so once you leave the door open, it automatically goes back to its initial position. So there is a role of damper over there, which basically dampens the oscillations. Once you push the door to enter somewhere, then you leave it, it moves back and forth and ultimately rests at a equilibrium position, right? So in the beginning, uh, let's say your damping is very high. If your damping is very high, what you would see, it won't overshoot a lot. Overshoot करने का मतलब, let's say I have opened the door, it comes back to its initial position and moves in the other direction. Okay, so that is overshoot that is happening over there. Okay, so it had to settle at some value, but it rather went even above that. So that is the case of overshoot, which can also be seen from graph here. So if your damping is very high, your overshoot will be less, right? अगर damper बहुत ज़्यादा strong लगा हुआ है, so once you push it, you enter a room, it would slowly move to its initial position with very less oscillation, right? Whereas if damping is not high, right? If damping is low, then what happens? It would go back and forth before settling at the correct position, right? Eventually it has to settle because there is a damper, but that damper won't come into effect very fast. One another thing is association with rise time. So if the damping is high, what do you think? Rise time will be low or high? Any guesses? So rise time was the first time when your system achieves the steady state value, the very first time it reaches there. So let's say if this is your door, okay, it is connected over here and it has to move here. Okay, so this is your position where it goes inside and this is the initial position where it has to be there. Okay, now once you enter the room, you move it here. Okay, so the door is pushed now. If your damping ratio is high, that means damping हो रही है, so it is going to dampen the oscillation. So the system would become slower. It won't come back to its initial position very fast. You will have less overshoot, ठीक है? It won't cross this initial position, but the rise time would also increase. you'll spend a lot of time in coming back to the initial position. This is a very practical example. I hope you understand what I am saying. If the damping is really high, if you are trying to stop the system to rest to its initial position, it would not have an overshoot. वो door बार बार initial position से back and forth नहीं होगा, but still the time that it will take to go to its initial position for the first time will be very high, right? So we can say as zeta increases, maximum peak overshoot increases, but rise time also increases, right? As zeta decreases, maximum peak overshoot increases, right? Because damping nahi hai, but rise time decreases. So one of the things that we can observe from here is maximum peak overshoot and rise time. What do we want? What do we want ideally in a system? We want that जितना कम overshoot हो, it is good, and जितना fast वो अपने steady state value को achieve करे, that is also the thing we want. So there is a like trade-off over here. ठीक है? We want higher rise time, but then we have lower sorry, okay, we want both of these things. We want higher rise time and we want less maximum peak overshoot. Both of the things do not go together. We don't want higher rise time, we want less rise time. Both of the things do not go together. You have to compromise between them. कि जल्दी से जल्दी it achieves the initial position. Also, there is not maximum peak overshoot anymore. I hope everything is clear. If it is not clear, you may please let me know. So because of this, there is a trade-off, and accordingly we have to select a value of zeta that fits for both of them. Okay. Okay, let's move to the next thing, settling time. Settling time is this is a band. This is either 2% band or 5% band. So at what point of time your output settles in between 2% band or 5% band? It is defined in both the ways. Okay. So if it has to settle in between 2% band, definitely it is going to take more time, right? If it is defined for 5% band, it is going to take less time. So accordingly, both of them have been defined. It is 4 by zeta omega n and 3 by zeta omega n. Okay, I hope all of them are clear to you. We'll have a couple of questions on them. But before that, let's move to controller. So we have already seen the controller acts on the error that is derived from the system, and then there is a control system control input from the controller which is applied to the plant for correction of the output, right? We have already seen this. So we have also seen the free and forced response due to non-zero initial conditions and due to the inputs provided. This is all. And what are poles? Poles affect the nature of the system response, right? Poles का placement कहाँ है basically tells us if the system is stable, unstable, if the response is going to be oscillatory, bounded, unbounded, and all of those things. Zeros affect the shape of the system response, that is dominance of poles. The closer the zero is to a pole, the dominance of that pole would decrease and the zeros would have an effect. It also, so all of these things are there. Then, okay, let's move to controller part. Now controller can be of many types, right? One of them is bang controller. So if error is less than a certain value, you provide one kind of input. If it is like not it is not less than some error threshold, then you provide another kind of input. Proportional controller basically acts based on or acts proportionally to the error. So you can see over here, there is an error coming over here and there is a controller. If it is proportional, it would just be Kp. So Kp into Et would be your control input, which is Ut. Okay. So here your proportional controller is Ut is equal to Kp into Et. And from here, if you like Us is equal to Kp into As, if you take the Laplace transform, and from here and this is just your CS. So CS into ET basically gives you UT. Yeah, right? This was CS, which was KP. Okay. So this is really simple and it leads to non-zero steady state error. Non-zero steady state tracking error means you want to track an input of 25 degree C, but eventually where you settle is not completely 25 degree C. There would be some error which comes. So proportional control leads to non-zero steady state error in certain classes of systems. Also, the higher Kp value of you have, the faster you'll be able to achieve the response. For example, if you want to track some input, let's say this one, if you have Kp to be equal to 1, you would track it like this. If you have Kp is equal to 10, you will track faster. Okay, so proportional actually works on the is directly proportional to the error. So error jitna zyada hoga, the controller would be more aggressive. Okay, let's talk about integral control. So integral control is basically controller is ki times and you integrate the error over the time from 0 to t. Okay, so here you are not just working on the current error which is there, instead you are adjusting your control input based on all of the errors which have been there. Okay, from 0 to t. So it is basically, so if you take the Laplace transform, it would be us is equal to ki by s into es. So from here your controller is going to be ki by s. Okay. You can see one of the things there. There is an open loop introduced here at 0. This is a problem for us because if you have a pole at 0, it might cause problem in terms of stability, right? So but this integral controller is helpful in such a way that it can lead to zero steady state error. It does introduce an open loop pole at 0 and it might lead to actuator saturation. Integral wind up error is also something that we study, but let's proceed. So for derivative controller is given by KD into differentiation of error. So it is just that you are multiplying with some constant coefficient and either you are giving your control input to be proportional to the error, or you are integrating the error, or you are differentiating the error. So in this case you can say US is equal to KD is equal, KD into S into S. So your controller is KD into S. So there is an open loop 0 introduced here. Okay. It is anticipatory. Okay. Anticipatory because it takes the differentiation and then okay, I'll tell you why I'm saying this. So let's take this example that was already covered. Let's say your error is of this nature. Okay, sine t plus 0.01 into sine 100t. Your error is really less, right? It is sine ka term plus 0.01 into something. Whereas if you take the differentiation, what would happen? Your error would increase significantly, right? So your error was actually of low magnitude, but it introduces high frequency noise into the system because your system had 0.01 sine 100t, which is now cos 100t. Okay, it is anticipatory in the sense that since you are taking the differentiation, it is always with respect to the next time instant. That's why it is also anticipatory. Now, since we for now we have seen P, I and D independently. Let's say we have a combination of PI controller. So it would be Kp into Et plus Ki into integration of error, right? This is the same thing which we have done. It was just individually. So here, if you take the Laplace transform, it would be Kp plus Ki by S for controller, and then this becomes your controller. Okay. So the next is PD controller. If you take PD controller, it would be Kp into Et for proportional and Kd into d upon dt for derivative, and this would be your gain. And the very common used controller is PID controller. This is the most basic form of controller that is being used everywhere and anywhere. So if you proceed with control systems in electrical domain, in mechanical domain, in robotics domain, anywhere, if you proceed with this, PID controller is the one that you are going to have a first try on. If you are using Arduino, you are using Raspberry Pi, this is the very first controller that you are going to write. Okay, so it is ut is equal to पहले proportional का ले लिया, so this is for p, this is for I, and this is for d. You simplify it, you get the following: kp plus ki by s plus kt into s. Right? I hope this makes sense. So from here the controller part is clear. Okay. Now, yeah, this is we'll have primarily questions related to all of these only. This is just another concept that I'm touching now. We'll just have one question for this from this, and in the next class we'll have very important topic coming up. This will help you in assessing the stability of the system. Okay. Before that, so if let's say I give you a system S5 plus 4 S3 plus 6 S2 plus 1, I tell you find the stability of the system. So definitely there would be 5 roots of the system. You'll try to find out what are the 5 roots of the system, and then you will check if they are lying in the left half of the S plane, then only you'll be able to comment on stability or instability of the system, right? But is it so easy to find out S to the power 5? If I give you S to the power 10, what you'll do? How will you calculate the 10 poles? It's not that easy, right? Because as you go for higher powers, this method seems to fail. So what is the other method that we can use to assess the stability of the system? So before that, we'll not go much deep into this, but I just want to clarify one thing, that let's say you're given a polynomial which is a naught into, if I say it is a third order polynomial, then it would be a naught into s cube plus a1 into s square plus a2 into s plus a3. Okay, so all of the coefficients are of this way, of a naught, a1, a2, a3, an. So what is a Hurwitz polynomial? So a polynomial is said to be Hurwitz if all its roots have negative real parts. ठीक है, तो how do we ensure this, that all the roots have negative real part? So if let's say I give you a first order polynomial, so if I give you a1 s, a naught s plus a1, you'll write s is equal to minus a1 upon a naught. And from here you can say that if a1 is greater than 0 and a naught, or you can say if a1 and a naught both are of the same sign, both of them are non-zero, should be the very first condition for the root to exist, and also a naught and a1 both should have the same sign. Okay? a1 a naught, if both of them are positive, then s would be minus a1 upon a naught. a1 and a naught, if both of them are negative, then both of the negatives cancel out and only this negative remains which is there. So this is the way how you can say that okay, system is stable. Okay, so and if your polynomial is of second order, then it would be a naught s square plus a1 s plus a2. So it would be Hurwitz when a1, a naught and a2, all of these are non-zero and should have the same sign. If this condition exists, if this happens for first and second order system, you can definitely say that the system is stable and the roots of this equation have negative real parts, and the poles for this characteristic equation lie in the left half of the S plane. Any doubt in this? Okay. So the whole point is I would not proceed to n is equal to 3 because this is the place from where Routh-Hurwitz criteria starts. I want to go into this for now, but there is something called necessary condition and there is something called sufficient condition. So for proving the stability of the system, we need to prove both necessary and sufficient condition, and then we can say that the system is stable or unstable. But for these n is equal to 1 and n is equal to 2 for first and second order systems, we don't need to prove stability using Routh-Hurwitz criteria, because this Hurwitz polynomial itself is a guarantee of necessary and sufficient condition for the system to be stable. So for now, I would prove why second one works. Okay, you can solve it with this also. What do we say? The quadratic equation solver. So that would also give you the result that, let's say, if all of them are of the same sign, then what is going to happen. But I won't go into that. For first order, it is very clear, right? A1 and A0, if both of them are of the same sign, then you are going to have a negative root over there. Okay, for n is equal to 2, I'll show you with Raoult's criteria. Just for this class, assume that it would be Hurwitz only when all of them are non-zero and all of them are of the same sign. Like if a naught is 0, uh, yeah, a naught is 0 won't be a problem. If a1 is equal to 0, then a naught square plus a2 is a problem. Okay, because your system, you won't have all of the roots to be lying in the left half of the S plane. So remember these things for now. Okay, we would learn this Raoult-Hurwitz criteria in the next class. Okay, so here let's go with the question. So I would request you to be ready with pen and paper, and let's solve this. So a second order system is governed by y double dot t plus 4y dot t plus 2yt is equal to ut. Second order system, right? So we need to find if the system is underdamped, if it is overdamped, if it is undamped or critically damped. Okay. So what we would do first, the very first step is find the Laplace transform. Once you have the Laplace transform, compare it with omega n wala equation. Let's check this. So first I would take the Laplace transform. It is gs upon s square plus 4s plus 2, right? Any confusion with this? Your gs is ys upon us. I hope Laplace is clear to everyone. There shouldn't be a confusion. If it is, please let me know. Okay. If it is not, then we would compare it. Comparing the transfer function with the standard second order transfer function, which is given by omega n square upon s square plus 2 zeta omega ns plus omega n square. You don't have to compare the numerator, never, because अगर ऊपर भी compare किया नीचे भी compare किया, you'll get the answer to be different. What we are really, because here there can be a factor, right? If it is 2 by 3 or something can be there, so this can be absorbed there. So never compare using this, let it be equal to 1. You have to always compare the results from here. Okay, so let's check. So 2 zeta omega n is equal to 4, right? And omega n square is equal to 2. From here you can write omega n is equal to root 2. Okay, from here let's find out what is zeta. So 2 into zeta into root 2 is equal to 4. So from here what do you get? Zeta to be equal to root 2. Zeta is equal to root 2, that means it is 1.414, which is greater than 1. What happens when zeta is greater than 1? What is the system called? Right, it is overdamped. So overdamped is your correct answer. I hope there is no confusion. We'll move to the second question. A second order system is governed by y double dot t plus 6y dot t plus 20yt is equal to ut. What is Is it the same question? No, it's not the same question. What is the natural frequency? So let's find the transfer function for this. S square ys plus 6s plus 20 ys is equal to us. From here you can write ys upon us is 1 upon s square plus 6s plus 20. Right? So from here you can write 2 zeta omega n is 6 and omega n square is 20. So your omega n from here is root 20. Okay, I am not simplifying it for now. From here 2 into zeta into root 20 is equal to 6. So zeta is 3 by root 20. Right, we'll see whenever the question is asked. First of all, omega n is root 20. What is my question asking? The natural frequency, omega n. Which means you can write omega n to be equal to 2 root 5, right? What is the value of 2 root 5? It is 4.47, right? 4.47 radian per second. So this is your correct option. Okay. Let's move to the next question. The damping ratio of the system given in problem 2 is what? We already found out, right? Zeta is 3 upon root 20, which is 3 upon 2 root 5. What is 3 upon 2 root 5?
0.670.
Okay, 0.670. So this is your correct option. Okay. Let's move to the next question. The frequency. Okay, so it is asking about the same question. So there, what was your GS? It was s square plus 6s plus 20 as far as I remember. Yes. So this is the we want to find out what is the frequency of oscillation in the unit step response of the system. Okay. So from here, what we'll do, so your ys upon us is given by 1 by s square plus 6s plus 20. From here you can write ys to be equal to s square plus 6s plus 20 into us. Us would be 1 by s, but that is not going to have any role in the frequency of the system, in the damped natural frequency of the system, right? Because what matters will come from here only. So you're essentially, this question is asking you what is omega d, and omega d has nothing to do with uh, nothing to do what you.
Ma'am,
So just a second, let me complete. So when we did all the calculation for unit step response, right? We did unit step response for under damped system. Okay? From there we arrived at this transfer function, right? Do remember, it is unit step response and it is not any other response. It is not unit ramp, it is not any unit impulse or any other thing. Okay, it is just unit step response for under damped system. So everything that we are doing for the same transfer function or finding out the rise time, maximum peak overshoot, or all of those those are only applicable for this genre of systems. Now, the questions says unit step response because it wants to make clear that it is a second order system. Okay, and then uh, the what I wanted to say, yeah, it is a second order system, and for that you are trying to find out everything. So it is basically asking you what is the damped natural frequency of the system. So it is defined by omega n under root 1 minus zeta square. Okay, from here you have all the values. You have root 20 and then you have 1 minus 0.671 square. From here you can find out omega d. Yeah, Shamita, please continue.
Ma'am, how we are telling in the question they are giving a damping, they're telling to find damping frequency.
Okay, so since it is okay, just let me go back. There was some natural frequency of the system which was given by omega n initially. Okay. Also, there is a damping associated with the system which is given by zeta. When all of them came together, okay, the natural frequency of the system is not present in the system right now. There was a natural frequency of the system, but since there is a damping, for example, if there is a door, the example which I gave you, and let's say there is no damper present over there, it is just slamming of the door. ठीक है, अंदर बाहर, it is just happening. If there is just slamming of the door happening over there and there is no damper of there is no damper present over there, so it is just the natural frequency of the door with which it is oscillating. But if you have a damper present over there, what is coming into effect? Definitely it is not going to just remain omega m, it is going to be omega d, which has a natural frequency, and it is getting damped by a term which is multiplied as under root 1 minus zeta square. Okay, so if the question is something apart from natural frequency and it is asking the frequency of the system and there is a damper involved over there, then it has to be damped natural frequency. Matlab, if it is going to ask you omega n, it would directly say natural frequency. If it has not said natural frequency, that means it is asking about the frequency of the system, and the frequency of the system would definitely take into account the damping of the system. So it has to be damped natural frequency. So you can see here, in this case, the frequency of oscillations in the unit step response of the system given is what? It is not asking you the natural frequency of the system, rather it is asking you what is the frequency of oscillations in the system. So which is definitely going to take into account everything, zeta, omega n and everything. So we are going to answer omega d.
Yes,
Okay?
ma'am, I got you. Okay.
Okay. So what would be the answer to this? Okay. It's going to be 3.316 radian per second. Okay, it's just calculation. Let's not take much time into this. But this is the way how you're going to solve. So this unit step response had nothing to do with being multiplied over there and finding out by converting into inverse Laplace. क्योंकि अगर unit step दिख जाता है तो what we usually do, we replace us by 1 by s. But the question is not asking that, right? The question is just asking the frequency. We don't want the response of the system. If we just want frequency, so this US was just meant for telling you that, okay, you can go ahead with this formula. You can just go ahead with this formula. This was the hint that this unit step response gave you. That is it. Let's move to the next question. The rise time of the system given in problem 2 is what? So your rise time, as we already saw, is given by pi minus beta upon omega d. Pi is this. What is beta? It is beta is something that we need to calculate. It is cos inverse zeta. What is the value of zeta that we had obtained? It was 0.671, right? From here, you'll get the value of beta. It would come out to be 0.835. Okay? Just put this value of beta over here, 0.835, and we got omega d in the last question, right? It was 3.316. Whatever answer you get is going to be your rise time. It would be 0.7 seconds. Any confusion over here? It's just rise time, pi minus beta upon omega d. Omega d we found out in the last question, which was omega n into 1 minus zeta square under root. And then what we did, we just found out beta, which is cos inverse zeta. We put it here. I have not explained today that how we are arriving to all of these. This was already explained in the lecture, so I haven't repeated those things. But yes, this is the way you find out the rise time. In the next couple of questions, we'll have everything, maximum peak overshoot and everything. Okay. For the same question, the next question is we want to find out what is the peak time. So your peak time, which is given by Tp, is pi upon omega d, which is pi upon omega d was 3.316, right? You will get it to be equal to 0.947 seconds. Okay? Any confusion here? These are very easy questions and these are completely formula based. Do remember the formulas, they'll help you. Don't start deriving when you need them. Okay? All of these formulas should be very handy. Right now you are seeing everything in time domain, right? At later point of time, like around week 9-10, we'll have a couple of formulas in the frequency domain. Okay, it would be phase margin, gain margin, bandwidth, all of those. And all of those can be related to these time performance specifications as well. You will see that there would be some relation between them coming. Phase margin would have some rough relation with zeta, and all of them would be coming into picture. For now, we are just working in the time domain. Later, we'll have the things in the frequency domain as well coming up. But yeah, do remember these formulas. These are important ones, okay? Don't miss them. You'll get the questions directly from here in the exam also, I believe. Because this is very simple, right? If you go wrong with the formula, you'll lose marks like this also. And this is very important, okay? Let's move to maximum peak overshoot. It is given by e to the power minus pi zeta upon under root 1 minus zeta square. Okay, into 100%. Put the value e to the power minus pi into 0.671 upon under root 1 minus 0.671 per square into 100. I want answer from your side this time. Please solve this. is e to the power. Everything that is written over here. Please answer this question.
Five point 82.
Okay, very good. It's 5.8%. Okay, let's move to the next question. The settling time of the system given in problem 2 is what? So let's consider 2% criteria. Okay, we already saw that there are two formulas for 2% band and 5% band, right? Let's see for 2% criteria. Settling time, which is given by Ts, 4 by zeta omega n. 4 by, what is the value of zeta?
0.671.
Okay, 0.671. And what is the value of omega n? Root 2.
4.47.
4.47 was the value of omega n. Okay. What is the answer that you guys are getting? Is it 1.33?
Yes.
Okay. So this is also clear, right? Now let's move to the next question. Okay. Which one of the following statements is true about a proportional controller? What is a proportional controller? It is given by ut is equal to kp into et. Right? If I take the Laplace transform, it's us is equal to kp into es. So your cs over here is kp. Right? So first option is the controller transfer function is a first order polynomial is in S. It is not, right? It is just kp. It is a constant. So this is the wrong option. It would lead to zero steady state error for all stable closed loop systems while tracking a step reference input. We already saw that it does not lead to zero steady state error. It happens with I controller. It does not happen with proportional controller. By increasing the value of kp, what we can just do is we can achieve the value closer to steady state value fast, but we cannot make the steady state error to be zero. Okay, so we will always have non-zero steady state error. So this is also a wrong option. The control input is inversely proportional to the error. Is it? No. Control input cannot be inversely proportional to the error. It is directly proportional. In all the cases, not only for proportional controller. So this is also wrong. The control input at an instant of time dependent only on the value of the error at that instant of time, right? This is the correct option, right? Because the control input is varying with respect to error. It is just depending on the error and not any other thing. Kp is a constant, right? So it varies with the change in error. So the correct option is D. Any confusion here? Okay. Let's move to the next question. Consider a second order system that is governed by y double dot t plus y dot t plus 2yt is equal to ut. Is it critically stable? Is it unstable? It is stable or it is marginally stable? So let's look at it. Let's take the Laplace transform. It would be s square ys plus sys plus 2ys is equal to us. So from here, ys upon us is 1 upon s square plus s plus 2. Right? We want to know if it is stable, if it is unstable, or what is the situation over there. Do you remember I told you something about Hurwitz criteria? Can you, based on that thing, can you answer this question? Like, okay, I'll just drop few hints. So your characteristic equation here is s square plus s plus 2 is equal to 0, right? So this is basically the polynomial which is going to decide where are the poles placed. If the poles are placed on the imaginary axis, on the right half of the S-plane, on the left half of the S-plane, where are they actually lying? So one thing is you can find the roots. Okay, you'll get two roots of the system and then you'll be able to say that okay, or both of them lie in the left half of the S-plane, the system is stable. One of them lies in the right half of the S-plane, system is unstable, and all those things you'll be able to do. If they are multiple in number on the imaginary axis, then it's a problem and it is unstable. So all of those things are already there. But if I say no, I don't want to use this method and I want to use Hurwitz criteria. Can you tell me if the system is stable, unstable? What is the situation? First of all, is this polynomial a Hurwitz polynomial? Can you answer this question?
It is a stable system
Okay. You say
as
it is a
all the coefficient of S have same sign.
okay. They do have a same sign, and there was another condition. You are correct. They have same sign, so that is true. There was another condition. Do you remember? Okay, so it is just that the coefficients of the s should be non-zero. So if there were an equation s square plus 2, it would not have been Hurwitz. Okay, that is why. So the first condition is all the coefficients in this case are non-zero. The second condition is all of the coefficients have the same sign. So as both of them are being satisfied, it is a Hurwitz polynomial, and as we already saw that for first order and second order, if the Hurwitz criteria is satisfied, we can say that the system, then we can say that the system is stable. It won't work for third order system. For third order system, Hurwitz criteria just becomes a necessary condition, but the sufficient condition is given by Raoult's criteria. That we'll see in the next lecture definitely. But for first and second order system, you don't need to construct Raoult's array. You can directly answer from here. Okay, that if it is a Hurwitz polynomial or not. If it is a Hurwitz polynomial, it's going to be critical. It's going to be stable for sure. Okay. So from here we can say all the poles of system would lie on LHP. Therefore, system is stable. Okay. Let's move to the next question. A unity negative feedback closed loop control system is designed with above system plan described in problem 10. Okay, using a proportional controller. Proportional controller means Kp being the proportional gain. The closed loop system is stable for what values of K? Okay, that is what we want to answer. So the very first thing is, what is our GS? We have to answer it from the last question, right? It's 1 upon s square plus s plus 2. This is your GS. We want to find out the closed loop system is stable for what? तो closed loop system की stability के बारे में if we are talking, that means we need to have closed loop transfer function. That is the first thing we should find out, right? Before that, what is CS? CS is Kp, because we are just talking about a proportional gain, right? So from here, how would you define closed loop transfer function? It would be GS into HS. GS would comprise of both these terms, right? So in this case, I should not say it to be GS, I should say it to be PS. This is a plant transfer function and this is the controller transfer function. So we know very well, right, that GS is equal to PS into CS. Or I should write it other way around, though it does not matter. CS into PS is your GS. The open loop transfer function in the, I hope I am making the things clear. If it is unclear, let me know. So you know this, right? So this is your reference input and this is your error, which is over here. From here you have a controller, then you have an input coming out. Here you have plant transfer function and then you have YS coming out. YS goes back, it goes to HS and HS brings out the response. So what happens? So from here you can see CS into PS. So this forms the part of open loop transfer function which is given by GS. So what happens here? GS into HS upon 1 plus GS HS. And what is GS? It is CS into PS into HS upon 1 plus CS into PS into HS. This HS is 1, this HS is 1 because it is given unity negative feedback. So from here what you can write, I'll erase this. So from what you can write from here? What is your CS? It is Kp, right? Kp upon s square plus s plus 2 upon 1 plus Kp upon s square plus s plus 2. Okay? From here, what you can write? Kp upon s square plus s plus 2 plus Kp. So your characteristic equation is s square plus s plus 2 plus Kp, right? This is your characteristic equation. We have to find the value of Kp such that the system is stable. Now, from the Hurwitz criteria, if we apply the Hurwitz criteria, what would that say? S square coefficient is non-negative, that's fine. S coefficient is also non-negative, that's fine. That means 2 plus Kp cannot be equal to 0. Okay? This is the first condition. The second condition is all of the coefficients should have the same sign. Since S square's coefficient is 1, S ka coefficient is also 1, that means 2 plus Kp should also be positive. So 2 plus Kp should be greater than 0. Right? From here, what you can write? Kp should be greater than minus 2. Is that clear? Any confusion here?
Clear.
Okay. Let's move to the next question. So it's about the same problem. The closed loop system designed in problem 11 is expected to track a unit step reference input. The steady state tracking error is what? ठीक है? Do you remember in the last class we had this how to explain that? Okay, you know this, right? Bias upon US is given by GS upon 1 plus GS HS, right? You can write mm, you can write just a second. This is YS upon US. YS can be written as ES upon ES into GS, right? ES into GS upon US, you can write it as GS upon 1 plus GS into HS. From here, these two terms cancel out. From here, you can write, let's say this, I am replacing U by R because I want to make sure it is reference. It's not a control input, it is a reference input, right? YS upon RS. YS upon US is also the reference input, which we usually say unit step or whatever it is. So from here you can write ES to be equal to, it is just, I'm writing U, replacing U by R. That is it. So ES can be written as RS upon 1 plus GS HS. Okay. We have also read final value theorem, right? And what does final value theorem say? Limit t tends to infinity, yt is equal to limit s tends to 0, sys. We know that, right? So this is a theorem that we are going to apply here. I had discussed this in the last class. I don't know how many of you were there, but this is really important. All of these were discussed. So from here you can write steady state error ESS, because now I am answering in Laplace domain. Limit s tends to 0. Okay, s, yes, right? Okay, but see, it could have been answered as limit t tends to infinity et. Since I am having the expression right now in Laplace domain, what I'll do, I'll write it in this way, limit s tends to 0, ses. Because I want to find out what is steady state error. Steady state में error कितना आ रहा है, that is my whole point. So definitely my function of interest is es. Okay. From here you can write limit s tends to 0 srs upon 1 plus gs hs. Right. From here, what you can write? So what is this? This is open loop transfer function. What is this? This is reference input, right? So from here what we can write? We can write limit s tends to 0, s into reference is unit step. So it's 1 by s upon 1 plus GSHS was Kp upon s square plus s plus 2. Right? Because my GS was CS into PS. And CS into PS was Kp into 1 upon s square plus s plus 2, right? And HS was 1 because of unity feedback, negative unity feedback, right? So from here, these two terms cancel out. So what remains? 1 upon 1 plus Kp by 2, right? So it's 2 upon 2 plus Kp. So this is your steady state error. The steady state tracking error is what? This is your steady state tracking error. 2 upon 2 plus Kp. 12a. Right? Any confusion here? Do you need explanation? I hope the things are clear. So this is the way, this is the application of final value theorem, where in time domain, when you want to go for steady state, you basically take t tends to infinity. When you apply the same to frequency domain, you change it to s tends to 0 and sys. Alright. And then when we wanted to find it out the steady state error, instead of doing it in time domain, we wanted to do it in frequency domain. If you wanted to do it in frequency domain, then we have to use the final value theorem, and it has to be limit s tends to 0 SES. ES we already know is RS upon 1 plus GSHS. That is what we have applied here. No confusion? Okay, let's move to the next question. Which one of the following statements is true about an integral controller? Okay, so the first thing is it can amplify low magnitude high frequency noise. We already saw that this is done by derivative controller. So this is wrong. The controller transfer function introduces an open loop pole at 0. This is correct, right? Because controller transfer function for this is Ki upon S. So it introduces an open loop pole at 0. So this is correct. We have already the correct answer, but still we'll see other options. It would always lead to non-zero steady state error while tracking a reference input. This is also wrong because we saw that with the help of integral control, we can get zero steady state error. We get non-zero steady state error in case of proportional input. And the fourth option is the control input at an instant of time depends only on the current value of the error. No, it does not depend on the current value of the error. It depends on the integral of the error. Right? So your correct option is B. Clear? Okay. Let's move to the next question. Which of the following statements is false about a PD controller? Okay. The controller transfer function introduces an open loop pole at 0. This is definitely wrong because CS is given by Kp plus KdS. इसका पोल है ही नहीं. Nothing is there in the denominator. So this is definitely a wrong option, and since it is asking for, this is definitely a correct option. The other option is it would provide a non-zero control input in the presence of non-zero error signal. So if there is non-zero error signal, it would provide, this is definitely right? Because अगर इसको ES से multiply किया, or forget it. If I write US, it is Kp plus Kd S into ES. It would provide a non-zero control input for non-zero error. Obviously, non-zero, अगर error 0 हो गया, it is going to be 0. If there is some error, then it is going to be some value. It is anticipatory in nature, which is also correct because it takes a derivative at each time step. The controller transfer function introduces an open loop 0 on the real axis. It does because controller transfer function is given by Kp plus KdS. Let's equate it to 0. It would be S is equal to minus Kp upon Kd. Kp and Kd are positive constants, so it introduces open loop 0 on the real axis. So this is also correct. So the correct option is A here because it is asking for false. This is clear. This is the final question that we are taking for today. So consider a second order system that is governed by the following: y double dot t plus 2yt plus ut. A unity negative feedback closed loop control system is designed for this system. So proportional controller, a derivative controller, or whatever, the closed loop system would be stabilized by which of the following controllers? Okay, first let's take the Laplace. Then after taking the Laplace, what we'll do, we'll multiply it with the controller. We'll try to find out what is the closed loop transfer function, and where there we are going to replace it with the various controllers, and then we are going to find out which of them is going to stabilize the system and which is not. So let's take the Laplace transform. Your GS would be 1 upon, not GS, I would write it to PS, plant transfer function, S square plus 2. Okay, let's assume, let's take the first option into account and say that my CS is Kp. Okay, so your closed loop transfer, GCL, closed loop transfer function would be Kp upon S square plus 2 upon 1 plus Kp upon S square plus 2. Let's solve this. Kp upon S square plus 2 plus Kp. Okay, the closed loop system would be stabilized by what? Now, can you comment directly if the system is stable or not by looking at the characteristic equation for any value of Kp?
System is unstable because coefficient of S is 0.
Very good. So since we do not have any coefficient of S present over here, this system is unstable. That is why we can directly say that proportional controller won't stabilize my closed loop system. Okay, let's go for the next one, which is Kp plus Ki upon S. Okay, so it would be Kp plus Ki, Kps plus Ki upon S into 1 by S square plus, S square plus 2, right? 1 plus S square plus 2. Okay, if you solve it, what would happen? You'll get Kps plus Ki upon S cube plus 2S plus Kps plus Ki. So it would be Kps plus Ki upon S cube plus 2 plus Kp into S plus Ki. Again, the same problem, S square coefficient is missing. So the system is unstable. So this is also not the correct option. Let's go for the third option. It is asking for an integral controller. Okay? If it is integral controller, we will not solve it. What we can do is, second option mein hi, we put the value of Kp to be equal to 0. Just substitute Kp to be equal to 0 and let's see what is GCL coming out. It is Ki upon S cube plus 2S plus Ki. Again, the coefficient of S square is missing, so it is unstable. Okay, let's go for fourth option, which is proportional derivative controller, PD. Okay, so in fourth question, your CS is Kp plus KdS. Okay, so your GCL is Kp plus Kds upon s square plus 2 upon 1 plus Kp plus Kds upon s square plus 2. From here you get Kp plus Kds is equal to s square plus Kds s square plus Kds plus 2 plus Kp. Right? So from here there is a chance that this can stabilize the system. The only condition is all the coefficients should be non-zero and all of them should have the same sign. Since the coefficient of s square is 1, which is positive, right? So Kd should be also positive and 2 plus Kp should also be positive. That means Kp should be greater than -2, right? So yeah, PD controller can definitely stabilize the system. Right, so we have used this Hurwitz criteria that they should be of the same sign and all of them should be non-zero, and we can conclude from here that PD controller with the conditions, with the following conditions which we have found out here, all of these conditions, it can stabilize the system, right? So that's all for today. Next time we will cover, what do we have? Next time we are going to work on Raoult's-Hurwitz stability criteria, and we'll take the special cases from here. We'll also see the performance specifications. Okay then. See you next Monday at the same time. Bye.
Bye.